Crystal Wade here with Let's Wade In. So glad you could join us today. I love the story about how Jesus used his anger to make a wrong right. Remember with me, if you will, at the temple. It was a week before the crucifixion, and Jesus had gone into the temple with his disciples, and he became very angry when he saw the money changers there at the temple. Now, there's a reason that there were money changers there. People came from many different nations to the temple, which was God's house, to worship God. And part of their worship included money for tithes and offerings and for lambs and cattle for the sacrifices and for the dove. And all of these were the things at that time that they used as part of their worship. And so these people from many different nations had many different kinds of money, different kinds of currency. And there was a problem with that currency. The currency of the day, or the money of the day, would have the image or the picture of an idol, because these nations worship many other gods. So there would be pictures of their idols and symbols that went with them. There would also be pictures of their leader, their president, on their money. And there is a scripture in Exodus when God was giving Moses the directions for life, and it's in the Ten Commandments. And one of them said, don't make an image for yourself in anything in heaven above, earth below, or the waters under the earth. So if there was a picture of something, a president or an idol on the money, it was unclean according to the law that God had given them. And so it could not be used in the temple to worship God. This is a valid and legitimate situation. However, what was not valid was these men had set up these tables right at the edge of the temple, and they were trading money. That's what they were doing. They would trade a person that came, you or I, and we would have our money from our nation. And they would say, okay, here's some clean money that doesn't have the image of anything. You can take it to the temple. And then they would charge them fees. And in addition to those large fees that they would charge, they had a bunch of doves set over here. And the dove are singing and making music. And it's loud at the Father's house. And Scripture says, my house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations. And in a house of prayer, there is some quiet. There is joyful singing at points, and there's quiet, and there's a peace. And there is not businesses and money and birds and all of this stuff. So it was okay for them to change their currency. And those men could have done that anywhere else in town other than the temple. But what they had done was set up their business right there at the only place God said, this is my house. Now we have many different churches all over the place. At that time, there was the one temple. So they had set up their business at that one place that God had said, this is a special place, and I will meet with you there. So Jesus was rightfully angry. And that anger moved him to action. But in his anger, he did not sin. What he did was he thought about what he was going to do after he saw what made him so angry. He stopped and he thought. And then he went in and he turned over those tables. And that distracted the men. They're all on the ground trying to pick up their money. They weren't injured. Their tables were flipped. Their money was down. He moved the birds out of the way. And then while they're scrambling to get their money, he had the opportunity to say what he needed to say. And he said, my house will be called a house of prayer for all nations, but you have made it a den of robbers. Get out. And they did. And he put the whole situation back into order. He wasn't like, oh, let's all be friends, when he got angry and trying to put it back into order. No, he had to take an action that wasn't necessarily what those men at the tables wanted, but it was what needed to be done. He did not sin. He did not injure anyone. He restored order and made his point. So everyone that was truly worshiping the Father. They were so thankful and so relieved because Jesus had restored order and peace to his house. His anger drove him to an action that set back up order and peace, that made a wrong right without sinning. And that is the right way to use our anger. Okay? So remember, go with God and go for the gold.